Yo, guys, it's Hart going to be going over the top core plays for the 12-game NBA slate we have here tonight, as well as a game-by-game breakdown and quick thoughts on each team. Let's get right into it. Before we get into the breakdown, if you guys just hit that like button and subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. It really helps out my channel. But let's take a quick look at some game previews here in terms of the spread and game total. There is some blowout risk there in terms of the Heat and Magic game in that point spread. It's not the best game total there, 214.5, so that should be a pretty slow-paced defensive matchup there in that game. Moving on to the Knicks and the Cavs here, 228.5, so nothing crazy there, 227.5 for the Nets and Hornets. Sixers, Celtics, 229.5. Raptors, Hawks, 236.5, so that's kind of the first interesting game there in terms of kind of fast-paced, high-scoring, hopefully. Wizards, Bucks. There is some blowout risk there, as you can see, almost 11-point spread, 227.5 total. Moving on down, Pistons, Bulls, 234.5, that's good there. 236 for that Pelicans, Grizzlies. Clippers, Jazz, obviously some blowout risk there, 225.5. And then Spurs, Mavs, 224.5. Timberwolves and Blazers, 220.5 there. And then finishing off with the Kings and the Suns, about 230.5 there. So as you can see, a couple games that might be some blowout risk, blowout potential, but it's the NBA, the National Blowout Association. So the games that you think might be close could be blowouts, and the games you think could be blowouts might be close. It's just one of those things. The NBA is super random when it comes to that stuff. And in terms of this slate and kind of the NBA DFS overall, excuse me, if you guys need a quick reminder, refresher, the NBA is chaos, especially in DFS. Like in terms of like these videos, take it with a grain of salt. Like these are just more so to kind of help you get you in the right mindset in terms of your kind of lineup build and kind of who to start looking towards and why. But in terms of final core play looks, follow me on X, Twitter, or whatever you want to call it, because I'll have my final core play looks just because injury news is key to NBA DFS. It changes the entire slate, and it's one of those things, it happens throughout the night. So it's not like NFL where everyone's pretty much locked into the lineups once the games start. With NBA, you obviously have multitude of games. You have 3 games starting at 6, and you have a couple starting at 6:30, then 7, 7:30, 8, and so on. So it's like you can get news kind of in the middle, later end of the slate, and games that are just about to start that can change the entire slate and can really ruin your lineup if you're not on those players. So that's why DFS for the NBA is super frustrating, just because it's like on these massive 12-game slates, like there's injury news that could happen in like the 7th, 8th game that starts 2 hours later that could just tank your night if something goes wrong there in terms of like a star being out and all the value plays you want to get to. So in terms of the core plays, I'd say start, building out your lineup about, 45, 30 minutes before the slate starts, just because we should have a good amount of the injury news for the slate in that time. So I'd say, once again, take everything with a grain of salt. Don't start building your lineups until about 45-ish minutes before the slate starts. But yeah, in terms of the slate, kind of just looking across all of the positions, everyone's priced about right. Like there's really not a ton of steals that we're getting. Kind of in NFL DFS, as we saw this season on DraftKings, everyone was really, really cheap. And so it kind of allowed you to get to a bunch of different builds. Tonight, everyone is priced about right, if not a little bit overpriced in a lot of scenarios, where it's going to be a very concentrated kind of player pool of a lot of chalky but really good plays. And so the number one overall mispriced guy that you guys should just automatically lock into your lineup 100% is going to be PJ Washington here for Dallas. Projecting him for about 30 fantasy points. He should be playing 25 minutes, if not closer to 30 plus, and he might even start. So, I mean, it's just unreal that they priced him at $3,000. Doesn't make any sense. Lock him into your lineups. He is going to be a fantastic player. Even if he has a terrible game, goes to 15 fantasy points, let's say, at 3K, that is still 5x. It's absurd, the pricing they did with him. Lock him in your lineups. That is the number one core play that will not change throughout the day, is going to PJ Washington. He is the auto lock of the slate. Heading on over here to this first game, though, we get the Cleveland Cavaliers. Big news for them is that Garland's out, Strus is out, Hunter is questionable. In terms of the Cavs and their offense, everything is going to run through Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and a little bit of Jared Allen there. In terms of value, I really don't think there's a need to get to any of these kind of value plays. Sure, we'll get some, not Jaden Tyson, but we'll get some, a little bit of, maybe Craig Porter Jr., but otherwise, I just don't really have interest in this team. Obviously, they have Lonzo Ball, so that's going to kind of soak up some value there. It's just one of those things. In terms of Cleveland, the top two guys, Mitchell, Mobley, are fine. I just don't think there's a really need to get to anyone on this Cleveland side for tonight. On the Knicks side here, the big news is that Hart and Mitchell Robinson are out. OG's questionable. He should probably be good to go. Same thing with Karl Towns. In terms of this team, I think just the top two guys, Towns and Brunson, especially Towns, he looks like a fantastic play. At 8,500 with no Mitchell Robinson, he should be playing the 5, and that just boosts his usage and his overall stats in terms of the rebounds up a ton. So 85 for Karl Anthony Towns looks really, really good tonight. Even in kind of a slower pace, good defensive team in Cleveland, Towns looks fantastic. Brunson looks really good there. And in terms of like maybe a dart throw, if for whatever reason you land on him, I'd say maybe Mikal Bridges there or maybe OG, but I just stick with the top two guys, mostly just Towns for me. Moving on to Miami and Orlando here. Big news for Miami. Hero is out. Ware is questionable. That's really it. In terms of this team, it's pretty gross. As I mentioned, there is a little bit of blowout risk here. Everything's going to be going through Bam, Wiggins, and Powell. I think Bam is a little bit too cheap there. Powell, kind of the same thing. Otherwise, I just don't really have a ton of interest in this team. Maybe a little bit of Donovan Mitchell at 4,500, but otherwise, it's just everyone's priced about right. There's some blowout risk. Going to be a slow-paced game. Good defensive team in Orlando. I just think there's a lot of better plays to get to. Don't really need to force our way into Miami. In terms of Orlando, I think the best play on the Orlando side is going to be Paolo here. 8,200 is really cheap. I know they added Desmond Bane. That will open up the offense. Obviously, he's going to have a good amount of usage as well, but I think the clear top play on this team is going to be Paolo for the entire season. Obviously, Franz is really, really good. Bane's really good, and it'll be interesting to see kind of how this offense works, but I think Paolo is still a really good play tonight, 8,200. That's really it. I really want to get to anyone else here on the Magic side. These are going to be the three kind of main usage guys. Everyone else is kind of I just don't think there's a need to force your way there. Moving on to Brooklyn and Charlotte, just a god-awful game here. It will be interesting to see kind of what happens with Brooklyn this season. But Cam Thomas at the top, MPJ and Claxton. I think if you're going to, for some reason, get to this game and pick a Brooklyn Nets player, it should be one of these top three guys. Most likely Cam Thomas or MPJ. Otherwise, I don't have a lot of interest in this team. They're going to run like a really interesting rotation, probably like 9, 10, maybe 11 guys. And for that reason, everyone's just priced about right. There's really no standout plays. Moving on to the Charlotte side, kind of the same thing. Like if I'm going to get to someone, it'd probably be LaMelo Ball, maybe Brandon Miller. Otherwise, it's just not a lot of interest here for me in terms of this team. If Ryan Kalkbrenner starts, maybe him as a value dart throw at 3,200. Maybe he gets 15 fancy points. I don't necessarily think we need to force away there. There's just a little bit better chalk on the slate. Moving on to Toronto and Atlanta. On the Toronto side, another one of those teams like you're not going to really want to get to unless one of the kind of the main 4/5 guys are out. Everyone's priced about right. You have Scotty, you have RJ, you have Brandon Ingram, who is finally playing for this team. They acquired him at the trade deadline last year, and this is going to be his first game for them in his tenure there for the Raptors. So in terms of pricing, they're all priced about right. There's really no standouts. I think my favorite one would probably be Jakob Poeltl, and it would be hard to get to him just because of a lot of good center plays. But he is a guy that we've seen does have decent double-double, if not triple-double upside. So 6,400, he'd probably be my favorite play of the bunch. But yeah, with all of them healthy, good to go, I think that offense is going to be very interesting to watch, see how that works out. But I think Poeltl is going to be the best play. In terms of Atlanta, I have a good amount of interest in Atlanta here. I think Trae Young's fine. Same with Jalen Johnson. I wish he was priced down a little bit more. He's my favorite play last year in terms of DFS. But I think the one that really stands out is going to be Porzingis here, 7,300. I know with Boston, he was kind of limited, had his kind of role of just being out there for 25, maybe 30-ish minutes. But I think with Atlanta, they're going to run him out there for at least mid-30s minutes. 7,300 looks really, really good there in this matchup. Right now, I think he's definitely one of my interests in kind of a play for tonight. Moving on to Philly and Boston here. For Philly, Maxi's priced about right. I mean, this Embiid pricing he's just extremely mispriced. 8,700 going against Boston, who obviously there's no Jason Tatum, there's no Al Horford, which is huge in terms of Embiid. He's going to be going against Boucher, Luke Garza, Quita. Like, it's just absolute barbecue chicken matchup here for Joel Embiid. 8,700, one of the better plays of the day here. That's really it for the Sixers side. I think throughout the season, obviously, we're going to get to a good amount of Edgecombe. You could take a shot, but, in terms of Philly, we know all the offense is going to be going through Maxey and Embiid. Everyone else is just secondary plays, so I just don't think there's a need to get to them. Moving on to Boston here, Jaylen Brown's questionable. He should be good to go. Otherwise, everyone's priced a little bit too expensive for me. Brown at almost 9K, White at 8,300, Pritchard at basically 7K, Simmons at 6,700. Like, you're not getting value on any of these plays. It is not a good matchup, trying to guard Embiid. If I had to land on one guy, it'd probably be Derek White there. I think he feels the safest just in terms of his floor, but I just don't have a ton of interest in the Boston side. I think they're going to get absolutely cooked by Embiid. That's why I think Embiid's just a fantastic play tonight. Moving on to Detroit here. Favorite play is going to be Cade. Going to be one of the kind of chalky players of the slate tonight just because he's really, really damn good. And he's going against a terrible Wolves team here who has no one to guard him. So 9,900 for Cade looks like a great spend up for tonight. That's really it. Don't have much interest in anyone else here. They do have a good amount of guys they can go to. So I think a lot of, they'll play a good amount of guys off the bench. I think Cade's just your safest play tonight overall at 9,900. Moving on to the Bulls here. Giddey obviously has triple-double upside, but he's priced about right. Vooch he's just basically like $1,500 way too expensive there. Don't know why Vooch is about $9,000. Big news is Kobe White is out. So in terms of me and kind of my interest areas, it's going to be Matas here, 5,900. He had a really good, preseason. A lot of people who were shitting on him last year are now hopping on the bandwagon. It's funny to see. Everyone's like, oh, Matas is great. It's like, bro, you were hating on him 6 months, if not a year ago. Like, relax. But Matas looks fantastic. He's going to be one of the best players in the NBA probably in 2 years. He's really, really damn good if you guys have not seen him. And he's only adding to his bag. So 5,900 for Matas looks really, really good tonight. I have some interest in Ayo with no Kobe Whites. Obviously, he should come off the bench, maybe even start. We've seen him some pretty good games there. But the best play probably for the Bulls in terms of kind of just pricing and the value is going to be Trey Jones here with no Kobe White. He should see close to 20 minutes. In games last year, as you can see here, this stretch in, March? He plays in close to 30 minutes, if not a little bit more, and he had some really good games there, kind of high 20s into the 30s, fantasy points, a few games where he went for 45 plus. So he's going to be a really good play there at 4,000. Moving on to kind of the last half of the games here for the Pelicans. Zion going to be one of the chalkiest players on the slate, and for a good reason. They're missing DeJounte Murray still. Kevon Looney out. Matovic, whatever his name is going to most likely miss as well. So in terms of this team, they have Jordan Poole, so that kind of fills in the DeJounte Murray role. Trey Murphy's priced about right. I have a little bit of interest in Missy here at 5,900. He should play, I'd say, close to 30 minutes, if not a little bit more. He is a pretty decent point per minute guy, high motor, so he looks fine in this matchup against Memphis. But yeah, Zion's going to be the best play, 8,900. Kind of point forward Zion. He looks really good. In the preseason, he's finally skinny. So I expect kind of 35 minutes, if not a little bit more for Zion, 8,900 point forward. He looks really, really good in this matchup. For Memphis, it's going to be the top two guys for me, John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr. They're going to have to shoulder the entire offensive workload because, as you can see, they're really, really injured. No Ty Jerome, no Zach Edey, no Scottie Pippen Jr., no Brandon Clark, no Williams Jr. there. So in terms of Memphis, they're really depleted. These two are going to be the entire offensive workload, and then you'll get some Santi Aldama, and they're all priced about right. Like in terms of Triple J, he could be a decent leverage spot off of a very, very chalky Zion, and he has similar upside. So that is something to think about there. Otherwise, I just don't have a lot of interest. Maybe Jock could be some interest of like a dart throw value, but once again, don't think you need to force that. Moving on to the Wizards and the Bucks here. Obviously, there's some blowout risk, but in terms of Washington, not a lot of interest. I think the best play would be CJ McCollum here at 7,300, but that's really it. None of those teams that they could play like 12 guys off the bench, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I just don't have interest in that Washington side. For Milwaukee, two best plays are going to be Giannis there, 11.1K, and then Miles Turner looks pretty interesting. Kind of a younger, more athletic Brook Lopez, kind of filling in that role of just good defense, can hit those threes. I expect him to play at least 30, if not closer to 35 minutes every single night and be decently aggressive. So 6,700 for him looks pretty strong. And then KPJ is probably the second favorite price. So obviously it's Giannis, KPJ, and then Miles Turner for me. They're going to need him to shoot the ball a ton. He should be playing mid 30s minutes. He has really good upside. So him and Giannis look really good in this matchup. Moving on to LAC, Clippers versus Utah, blowout risk. Only interest I have is Kawhi Leonard at 8,100. That looks like a pretty good price tag. But otherwise, they added Bradley Beal, John Collins, Chris Paul, Brook Lopez. So in terms of that bench, it's just really hard to get to any values. It's just really Kawhi for me, and that's it. Moving on to Utah, we do get some value here. 6,800 for Lauri Markkanen, even in a blow-up, is very interesting. We know he's a guy that can go out there, shoot 20 times, and go for 45, 50 plus. But otherwise, the best play is probably going to be Keontae George in terms of upside there, and as well as Bryce Sensabaugh had a good preseason. Was decent in spots last year as well. So 3,700 for a guy that could go out there, get you 20, 25 fantasy points as a value play. I think that's interesting there. Moving on to the Spurs and Dallas. Victor looks really good there at 10.9K. And otherwise, I don't mind, taking maybe a dart throw on, Dylan Harper there at 5,500 if you do kind of land in that range and, he happens to be there. Otherwise, I'm not going to go out of my way to play really anyone on this side besides Victor at the top. Moving on to Dallas, I already mentioned, obviously, PJ Washington. We already locked him into the lineup. But, yeah, once again, play PJ, lock him in. Don't overthink it. Otherwise, the best play is going to be AD here, 9,700. They're going to force feed him the ball. The offense is going to go through him. Everyone else is kind of secondary options. I don't think there's a need to get to anyone else there besides AD at the top and obviously locking PJ Washington into your lineup. Moving on to the last two games here, Minnesota and Portland. Minnesota side, the big news is Anthony Edwards. Will he play? This is kind of what I'm talking about. Like, if he's ruled out, Julius Randle becomes one of the better plays of the slate. And in terms of these secondary guys, like DiVincenzo is going to look really, really good there. That's where the offense is going to go. If there is no Anthony Edwards to go to Randle, it's going to go to DiVincenzo. And they do have some interesting pieces off the bench in terms of maybe some Terrence Shannon Jr., maybe Robin doing him. But yeah, if that's the big news there that I kind of talked about at the beginning of this video is this could change the entire slate in terms of you want to lock in DiVincenzo and Randle if there is no Anthony. Now, if there's Anthony Edwards, he looks really good there at 9,000. Moving on to Portland, going to be a very interesting team to watch throughout the season. Young, pretty good. They added, obviously, Drew Holiday there at 6,200. He's probably the best play for me personally in terms of just pricing and upside as of right now. Otherwise, I don't have a ton of interest. Denny's already priced up. Shaden Sharp's, same thing. Klingen's going to start, but 6,100, not really going to get a discount. That's really it for me in Portland. And in terms of the last game here, no Sabonis, no Keegan Murray. I think DeMar DeRozan is going to be your best bet at 7,700. If we get the news that they are going to start, where do you go? Sarge, 4,000. I have interest there, but they also have Eubanks. They could really split up those minutes. Obviously, Phoenix is not too big there, so they could definitely keep it small. So I think DeMar DeRozan, maybe that dart throw of Sarge if he does get to start. But obviously, there's some Eubanks as well that could kind of ruin that. In terms of Phoenix here, it's just going to be Devin Booker for me, 9,600. They already priced up Mark Williams. Jalen Green is out. Grayson Allen should be good to go. We'll see if that happens. But yeah, no real interest in anyone besides Devin Booker. Everything's going to be going through him, and it's just going to be pretty gross in terms of these kind of secondary options. Maybe we get news that they start someone else, but in terms of their depth chart, it's probably going to be Devin Booker at the starting point guard, Grayson Allen, Ryan Dunn or Royce O'Neal, Dylan Brooks most likely, and then Mark Williams. So as you can see, it's a pretty gross team. In terms of that secondary score, I don't really know who it would be. Maybe Grayson Allen, but I think you just kind of leave with Devin Booker and that's it. So in terms of kind of first look build, as I said, injury news changes everything. We're going to get injury news throughout the day that really changes kind of a lot of these other core plays. And as I said, these aren't really core plays right now. These are kind of just first look builds. The only core play I have right now is going to be PJ Washington there. But to kind of finish out this build, 6,300, let's take a quick peek at who we can get to for that price in the guard spot. Now, obviously, I could probably move some of these guys around to make it work easier, but we'll just leave it how it is right now. In terms of 6,300, not loving this range. Just for the sake of this video, let's just say that Anthony Edwards for some reason does get ruled out, before these games start. Let's just throw in DiVincenzo. But yeah, this is the early look build for tonight. As I said, stay tuned with injury news. I'll have my core plays on Twitter. But in terms of the kind of core plays for tonight, I'd say right now, these would be my core plays for tonight's game. Trey Jones for the Bulls there at 4,000. PJ Washington, just an automatic lock there. Play him in 100% of your lineups. Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And as you can see, we were able to make it work with all other good plays. So hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.